Hello, welcome to a new episode of the Guru Perspective. And today I want to discuss what happened in the college first round of the college football playoffs. I feel like when I watched the college football playoffs, it was not bad, but I felt like some of the teams in there looked like they wasn't worthy to be held accountable to play in the football playoffs, especially in the first round. But then I had to look at it and I said, yeah, it's other teams that might have been better off filling those slots. You might have had Ole Miss, Alabama, or you name it, some of the more popular teams who didn't make it this season, maybe even Army. But what I was saying to myself, and I had a discussion with a few other people, and we both talked about and we said, well, maybe because it's just the first round, you're not going to get the best competition in the first round. Some of those games are going to be to the point where the quality might not be as good. And the second round will be more intensified when it comes to the playoffs and the competition. A lot of times you don't really get upsets in that first round. It's like the teams that you play. But the difference to me was some of the lopsided victories. The 8-9 seed game was the one that shocked me. But I want to get off into it now, and I want to talk about some of the games and what happened in the first round of the college football playoffs. I want to start off with number 11, SMU and Penn State. That was a shocker because SMU played pretty good all year, didn't really lose too many games except for the game that they lost when they played, Clemson. And so I look at it and I say, okay, what happened here? Drew Aller didn't do a lot, but he did enough for the team to win. Um, the running back of, Notre Dame looked pretty sharp. Nicholas Singleton. I mean, he did his job and did everything that he could to carry the team on his back. He had a pretty good game, 14 carries, 90 yards, and he had a touchdown. But the score was so lopsided that I was really surprised. And I said, well, does SMU deserve to be there? Maybe, maybe not. But SMU only had 10 points and Notre Dame had 38, and they didn't look back. And the problem to me was the really big X factor in this game was Kevin Jennings. I thought that he would play better than what he did. He had 195 yards. He had a touchdown, but the three picks on the day. The defense for Penn State played phenomenal, and I feel like they belong. You can say what you want about them with the big losses when it mattered. They lost the earlier game, to Ohio State, if I'm not mistaken. And that game, was pretty close at first. It was some mistakes that Penn State made that cost them that victory. But them losing to Oregon was something that they shouldn't have been ashamed of neither. And that was in the championship round, in the conference, the Big Ten Conference Championship. They ended up losing that game. And then, they lost the earlier game to Ohio State, but still, I still feel like Penn State belonged versus SMU, who just came in here and just laid an egg. I mean, maybe that's just the way the first round's supposed to be. I didn't see any upsets or anything that persuade me to feel like some of them teams actually belong. Maybe they'll clean it up and they'll eventually, within the next year or two, get the 16 teams to decide it all. But for now, I feel like they're doing the best that they could right now with the 12 teams in the playoffs. And I just looked at it like, well, this is just some of the things or the kinks that they're going to have to fix. Clemson and Texas, at first that game was really a laugher and a blowout, but Clemson started to fight their way in the end. I think it was too little too late. But Cade Klubnik looked pretty good. For what I've seen, he just didn't have enough in him to, face a team that was good as a Texas team. They were number 12, and they were one of the last teams that got in, too, for beating SMU. And Texas being number 5 overall. Quinn Ewers is starting to get a little bit more healthier, too, after the time that they had off. And what I've seen from him and his performance, I said, man, maybe I was wrong about Quinn Ewers, but I still feel like some of them interceptions need to be fixed. But at least he only threw one this time. because I felt like that game with Georgia, he actually threw that game away with the picks that he was throwing. Kate Public had 336 yards and a touchdown, and he had a pick on the day. But Quentin Ewers had 202 yards with a touchdown and a pick. The person who I think that opened this game up was Jaden Blue. The run game was phenomenal, and he just couldn't be stopped. He had 14 carries for 146 yards and two touchdowns. And TJ Moore, the wide receiver for Clemson, looked pretty good too as well. He had 116 yards and he had a touchdown. I liked what I seen too from Gunnar Helm on Texas. He had a pretty good game. He had 77 yards and he had a score on the day. But the score was 38-24. It was a little bit more respectable and clean up at the end. But I think a lot of it was in garbage time, to be honest with you, because they made it a little closer, made it somewhat respectable. But it already looked like Clemson was going to the second round regardless. Let me rephrase that. Texas was going to the second round because Clemson didn't have a chance. This is the game that surprised me, what I was talking about. Number 9 seed Tennessee and number 8 seed OSU. I looked at this game and I said this was going to be a good game, and you possibly can have Tennessee upsetting Ohio State. It wouldn't have been an upset because of how they're ranked. Tennessee was 9 and Ohio State was ranked number 8, but you can tell Tennessee was cold. They wasn't used to the cold weather game and the elements. And that's why I think Big Ten has some of the best competition, because not only are you going to play some of the cold climax team, but then the cold weather that we have here in Michigan, and you're going to have that in Ohio State and some of the other games that you're playing. But then you're going to have relatively warm weather now. You got the Oregons, that you play, but no, more or less the UCLAs and USCs of the world. So we got a mixture of everything now. But I just didn't think Tennessee can handle the cold in this game, and it showed going to Ohio State. That score was 42-17, and that's when I said, man, Tennessee belong. You can start seeing some of the teams that played, and you start to question yourself and question why were they in the playoffs. I know my partner on the Google Sports section, eBuck, was telling me, man, I don't think some of these teams belong, and they should have had the right teams in there. But I definitely thought Tennessee played well, and they were one of the respected teams that was going in. It's just the competition in the first round didn't live up to expectations, and that's my opinion. I wasn't too thrilled about it myself. I didn't feel like we got anything from Tennessee and Nico. I'm not even sure his last name. Emma Levea or Emma Leva. Okay, Nico Emma. That's his name. I was trying to get that out. And Nico Ivanema didn't do anything in the game. He looked like he was rattled the whole game for what I've seen too, and I don't think the cold weather helped. He had 104 yards total. And then when you look at Peyton Lewis, his running back didn't do anything, 10 carry for 77 yards. But on the other end, Ohio State showed up and they showed out. Will Howard, for instance, had 311 yards total. He had two touchdowns and a pick on the day. But then you see Trevion Henderson, and he played really good as well. He had 10 carries, 80 yards, and two scores on the day. And the rookie sensation, Jeremiah Smith, he looked really good as well. He had six receptions for 103 yards, and he had two touchdowns, and the game never was close. In that 42-17 victory that Ohio State scored over Tennessee was just another reason why I say, for example, you should have had 16 teams. The 12 teams is more than what we ever had before. And then we're going to the second round, but I give it another year or two to where we will see these other teams added on to the mix. But yeah, some of these games were absolutely unbelievable in how bad they were played. We had two teams too from Indiana. Speaking of the Indiana Hoosiers, number 10 ranked versus number 7 Notre Dame. And these games wasn't even close neither. When I looked at these games, I said Riley Leonard played okay. He didn't really have to do much, honestly. He had 201 yards. He had a touchdown and an interception on the day. Jeremiah Love, the running back, looked sensational. He had 108 yards and a touchdown. What I was surprised with how bad Curtis Rourke played. He didn't look good at all. You know, he had 215 yards and two touchdowns. That wasn't a bad game, but it was more or less like garbage points. They didn't really do much in executing the first half. And then by the time they started to get into rhythm, it was too late. And Notre Dame just looked like they dominated the whole game. That score didn't convince me. Seeing that score and seeing the end result didn't really still convince me that Indiana belonged. And because a lot of it I felt like was garbage time points that they scored with Indiana, and it was a little too late, and Notre Dame advanced. Then we have the games coming up too, and I want to give my predictions. You know, Penn State, they will be playing Boise State. Right now, I'm gonna have Boise, and I won't take the points with Penn State because they have Penn State winning by 11, and I think Boise is going to win that game. January the 1st, they have number 5 Texas versus Arizona State. I'm gonna take the points with Texas and go 14. Ohio State and Oregon. I'm going to actually go Oregon, and I will go 2.5 points because I think that this is going to be a game where Ohio State shows us that that last victory was something that you can arguably say was just poor time and clock management. And I think this game is going to definitely be just as close as that first meeting. Notre Dame, number 7 Notre Dame versus number 2 Georgia. I think Georgia's going to win this one, and they have Georgia by 2 points, and I will go under that. I want to go on now and I want to discuss and talk about some things that happen in pros in the NFL. I want to start off with the Thursday game. That game was actually pretty good because I didn't feel like Justin Hubbard was doing what he should. And I was a little disappointed because the game wasn't close at one point. Bo Nix executed and he looked sharp. He had 263 yards and he had 2 scores. I was a little upset because I said this is something that Justin Herbert does all the time. When the competition gets stiff and the defense look good, he just seems like he tuck his tail in between his legs and he move on. Not this time. It was a little different this time that I've seen and what was going on right now when it came to this game. Justin Herbert had 284 yards and he had 2 touchdowns on the day. Gus Edwards looked pretty sharp. You know, JJ Dobbins right now, he didn't play. And I feel like with him being injured, that gave Gus Edwards a chance to shine. He had 68 yards and he had 2 touchdowns on the day. What I was surprised with is the fact that Bo Nix and Denver looked really good that first half, but they didn't make any adjustments in the second half. And I've seen John Harbaugh looked really good. I mean, Jim Harbaugh stepped up and they looked really sharp in that second half. And I was told that they were going to make them halftime adjustments. And I said, okay, but we'll just have to see about that. And when I finally looked and seen that game, it was better than what was advertised because at one point I feel like Bo Nix and the team was going to get a good drive and they were going to take it all the way down and they were going to score and blow the game out of reach. But the defense stepped up with the Los Angeles Chargers. They went downfield and they got a score. And when they got the 2 point conversion, they didn't look back. It was just really good execution and it was good coaching. And a lot of people are slipping on the Chargers and how well they've been playing and executing. That final score was 34-27. I want to go on and I want to talk about some of the games that happened on Saturday as well. In the Saturday games, I feel pretty bad because there was some things that happened that really caught my attention. I really enjoyed watching the games, but I just didn't feel like at a certain part of the game that on the Kansas City Texans side that the team was in the game full-heartedly, honestly. When that game was played, it was back and forth at first. CJ Stroud didn't look too bad. He had 244 yards, two touchdowns. He did throw two picks in the game, and that's something that I was concerned about. He threw a first pick on a drive at the beginning, and then he threw a second pick as well. It seemed like he was getting rushed and he was getting routed by that good Kansas City defense. Joe Mixon didn't really do much. He was neutralizing on the ground. Tank Dell looked really sharp. He had 98 yards in the score, but that was the part of the game where we knew that I don't think Texas and CJ Stroud and that team was really in it anymore after the issue that happened in the game. It was a nice slant route. It was a nice catch, but when Tank Dell got hit in his knee, he dislocated his knee, and he's definitely out for the season. He pointed at his knee immediately. The teammates already knew something was wrong when they saw it. I didn't really get a good look at it. And when that happened, they said, "Man, you guys gotta get it off of him." They took the cameras off of Tank Dell, and yeah, it was a bad injury. You seen it in CJ Stroud, and the team was very emotional. Even Kansas City was, emotional, the crowd and, the players. It was just a sad situation. And, prayers to Tank Dell. I hope him having a safe and, successful recovery right now. That final score was 27-19. Patrick Mahomes had 260 yards and a touchdown. Kareem Hunt had 55 yards in the score, and Xavier Worthy had 65 yards in the touchdown. And that was the final score, the 27-19. And then the second game that happened on Saturday was Pittsburgh and the Baltimore Ravens. That was a really good game, and Lamar Jackson is showing right now why he should be one of the top two guys in the MVP race. He had 207 yards, three touchdowns, and an interception. Derrick Henry was a juggernaut this game. It was different from the game what they had when they played in Pittsburgh, when he couldn't really get good momentum and he couldn't really run the ball on them. I think a lot of this have to do with TJ Watt and his injury. He had 24 carries and 162 yards. Zay Flowers looked good and they couldn't stop him every time he got his hands on the ball. He had 5 receptions for 100 yards. Russell Wilson wasn't bad that game. He had 217 yards, two touchdowns. He had a pick on the day, but it was too much of Baltimore. And being at home gave them that momentum to pull that game out. That final score was a blowout. It was 34-17. I want to move on and I want to talk about some of the Sunday slot games. The Sunday games were actually really exciting too. I want to start off with one of the games that was dear to me. I'm finally excited too because when I mean us, I'm saying the Detroit Lions, we got a little bit of help. Didn't get all the help that I expected, but at the same time, I'll take what I can get. I'm going to start off with our game, Detroit versus Chicago. The game ended up being an early blowout, and Jared Goff looked really sharp on the day. He had 336 yards and three touchdowns. Jahmyr Gibbs without David Montgomery looked solid. He had 23 carries for 109 yards in the score. And Jamison Williams looked really sharp too as well. He had 5 receptions for 143 yards and he had a touchdown. Caleb Williams didn't look too bad. He had 334 yards, two touchdowns, and his picks went down. They decreased. Keenan Allen always seemed like he get the best of us, whether he was with the Los Angeles Chargers or with the Chicago Bears. He had 9 receptions for 141 yards, and he had a touchdown. But it was only two touchdowns scored on the day, and I think Cole Kmet and Keenan Allen was the only ones who scored a touchdown. I was disappointed at first, and then I know our defense is banged up, but they gave up a really big play, and then we got Melifonwu back, and we had guys come back to the defense on the back end that I thought was going to help, even though I know Carlton Davis the third is not there. But I had to say, that's going to happen sometimes. I know how injured we are, so I just had to say, hey, we got to do what we got to do right now and just try to outscore them and win this game. And that's what they had to do. But I was surprised too with Aaron Glenn, and his game plan was on defense. We got some stops and we got some takeaways. And we got those takeaways that executed into points. It was a pretty decent overall showing with the Lions, especially after losing to Buffalo. They were actually to get it together. It might not have been the prettiest victory, but they did good on execution and going out there and playing. That's one thing that they say about the Detroit Lions too. We're used to playing in the dome and not used to playing out in cold weather. I think they did exceptionally well. That final score was 34-17. I want to move on now and I want to talk about the Los Angeles Rams versus the Jazz. The game was actually close at first, closer than what I thought that it would be. Matthew Stafford didn't play as well as I thought neither. He had 110 yards, a touchdown, and he had a pick on the day. The person who I felt like carried this team was Kyron Williams. He had 122 yards and he had a touchdown. Aaron Rodgers had 256 yards and he had a score. And Devontae Adams had 68 yards and a touchdown. That was the only points they scored, and it was a really gritty game. It was a good defensive game as well. Let me know how well the Los Angeles Rams defense is now. But it's not all about the offense, but that front played well, and the team executed and looked good and got a lot of stops on Aaron Rodgers. That final score was 19-9. This was the game I was talking about, but we got a little bit of help. Philadelphia Eagles versus the Washington Commanders. I feel like this game got out of hand. Unfortunately, I feel bad too. Jalen Hurts is a person who I'm a huge fan of. I know he played for Oklahoma and ended his career there, but he was in Alabama. I got familiar with him because my family and him playing in Alabama. He got hurt in the game. When we saw the concussion, we had no idea he was hurt. It looked like a textbook. He just fell down on the ground, but then he bumped his head on that turf and he got up, gave a thumbs up to the refs. The ref was like, nah, man, you don't even look like you're there. You got to go to the tent and get evaluated. They evaluated him, making sure he was okay, found out he wasn't. He was out the rest of the game. Kenny Pickett didn't do that bad, though. He did pretty good. He was 14 of 24, 143 yards, a touchdown, and he had a pick on the day. Saquon Barkley was the difference maker. He definitely helped that team and carried them on his back when they needed him. He had 150 yards and two scores. A.J. Brown looked good, too, with the 8 receptions, 97 yards, and a touchdown. But I believe it was a little too much for them to overcome. Even without Jaden Hurts, I feel like Kenny Pickett did exceptionally well, and I give credit where credit is due with the Philadelphia Eagles. The issue was this: Jayden Daniels played well. He's definitely looking like, to me, the rookie of the year. He had 258 yards, 5 touchdowns. Yes, he had 2 picks, and there was a lot of, balls that was mishandled, pause. It was a lot of things that was mishandled and a lot of plays where they fumbled the ball. And the 2 picks definitely didn't help as well. They were giving the ball to Philadelphia, and Philadelphia is executing and getting points off of those mistakes. Jaden Daniels actually had 9 carries and 81 yards, 2 on the ground. I was really surprised in the way they played because at the end of the game, what I saw was when I seen that they had a 3-and-out, I thought that it was over. I said that they're not going to even get close to winning this game. Philadelphia's going to go down and they're going to execute. The problem was this week, and it was unfortunate, Devontae Smith couldn't convert, and it was a 3-and-out. It was a slant route. He had the ball. He was wide open. He bobbled the ball. That would have gotten the first down, and they would have ran out the time. They gave too much time to the rookie Jayden Daniels. And when that happened, he did what most veterans do. So that's why I believe he's going to be the rookie of the year and then throw 5 touchdowns against a defense that they said has been so dominant this season is the reason why I think he's going to be the rookie of the year. He went all the way down the field, executed the drive, a really good drive too. Went down the field, and once they were in the red zone, he caught a slant route on one of the receivers. I'm not sure if it was Terry McLaurin. I forgot who caught that slant route, and they caught the ball with 6 seconds left. What surprised me was when they went for two. They couldn't have went for the field goal, but I guess they felt like it was still too much time for Philly to maybe get a Hail Mary or get enough yards to where they could kick a field goal, so they didn't take any chances. They went in and they went for two, and they converted. And they ended up pulling out that game. This was the team that they said was the biggest threat to get the number one seed. And now they're 12-3. And the Washington Commanders are 10-5. They still in play for winning that division. Crazy as it sounds, there's 2 games left. I don't think that Philly's gonna lose out, but you never know. And with that game, that was huge implications on that game. The final score was 36-33, and then we're moving on to the next game. I'm not going to really talk about this one. I'm going to talk about this one briefly. The New York Giants versus the Atlanta Falcons. This is something I still have to talk about with this game, that the fact that they benched Kirk Cousins and they went with the rookie Michael Penix Jr. I was surprised that they gave Kirk Cousins all that money and still to draft a quarterback in the 2024 NFL draft. Michael Penix did good enough for them to win. He didn't lose the game for them. He had 202 yards and he had an interception, but he looked crisp. He was comfortable with throwing the ball. He didn't look like he was routed one bit, and it seemed like he was ready for that big stage. Bijan Robinson had 94 yards and a touchdown as well. Drew Lock didn't look so well. He had 210 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks, and I feel like Atlanta's defense played phenomenal as well. Jesse Bates, if I'm not mistaken, got a pick six in that game too, and they was just clicking on all cylinders. This was the first time I've seen Atlanta play like they should. The difference was the interceptions was like turned down. It was only one by Michael Penix. And then when you looked at the final score, it was 34-7. And that defense came to life too, as well. They didn't give the ball away on offense, and the defense was playing well. And that's the reason why that 34-7 victory became a reality. And that looked like the last chance and the last stop for Kirk Cousins in Atlanta. But then I still feel like it's a quarterback needy team's going to be out there, and he's going to go to that team eventually. Right now, you have the Cleveland Browns, you have the Giants, and you have other teams that's out there who still need a quarterback. And I believe he'll go on with one of those teams, the Tennessee Titans. It's a few teams out there that still needs help, and I think that they'll give him a call. I don't know if his contract will be as good as the last few has been, and I think whoever his agent is a great agent. But no, I don't think that's going to be the case. It's going to have to be a prove-it deal, and for him to go on with the team. And maybe if he is selling do good in that year, they will give him an opportunity to make more money. But I just wouldn't throw the money at him like Atlanta did and end up being face flat like they just did recently with this contract. This was a weird game too, and unfortunately, this might get Jonathan Gannon in trouble. He definitely on the hot seat. I wouldn't be surprised on Black Monday if he even loses his job, because right now what I'm looking at is an Arizona Cardinal team who had aspirations of making the playoffs and hell, even possibly winning that division. That didn't happen at all. Kyler Murray had 202 yards, a touchdown, and he had a pick on the day. James Conner, man, he looked definitely unstoppable this game. He had 117 yards and a score as well. And James Conner had 4 receptions and 49 yards, catching and receiving the ball. Bryce Young's played really exceptionally well. After he got benched for Andy Dalton and he went back in and played, he proved a lot of people wrong. This was a team that everybody laughed at and made fun of, including myself, and I felt like they were terrible. And they were definitely surely going to get the number one overall draft pick again and might go with a quarterback. We were all wrong. I wouldn't be surprised if they still go after a quarterback. I don't think it'll be a first round quarterback, but Bryce Young has looked really exceptionally well. He had 158 yards and 2 scores, but Chuba Hubbard is the person who's really stepped his game up over there with Carolina. He had 152 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Adam Thielen the wise veteran been really looking sharp, and he's been that receiver that really helps them out right now. A person that I feel like Bryce Young really needed to step up and help as well, and he's definitely been doing that. He had 43 yards, and he had a couple of clutch plays, and he had a touchdown as well. That final score was in overtime. Carolina Panthers beat the Arizona Cardinals 36-10. Most times we look at things and we'll say the record prove how good or bad a team is, but you never know with the Cardinals. We've talked about that all year on my show, and we talked about it on the Google Sports session and how poorly they execute. They're like a Jekyll and Hyde team. One minute they'll play well, the next they'll play bad. So I don't really know who this Arizona Cardinal team is, and I think it's too little, too late. I definitely believe right now that they're going to go with a new coach soon. The Cleveland Browns and the Cincinnati Bengals. This game right here was a little crazy, but it didn't really do anything to me, in my opinion, to persuade me that the Cleveland Browns are going to be better off without, Deshaun Watson. I think they might go in a whole different direction and just go ahead and get another quarterback. I don't think he'll be back with that crazy contract that they gave him. But what I seen in that game, Dorian Thompson Robinson didn't look really that good neither. He was rattled the whole game. He had 157 yards and 2 interceptions. Jerome Ford had 92 yards and a touchdown, and he was really solid in the game. And Joe Burrow looked pretty sharp too. But then, this is against a Cleveland team who I don't really have high expectations for anyway. Joe Burrow had 252 yards, 3 touchdowns on the day. Chase Brown looked really good with 18 carries and 91 yards, but Jamar Chase had 6 receptions, 97 yards, and a touchdown. You know, and the Bengals ended up winning that game convincingly, 24-6. Titans and the Colts was a weird game. The Titans was up at one point, and I'm talking about they were up big. No, the Colts were up big, and then the Titans came back on them, and that game was kind of weird because they were up at one point 31-7. And then that final score ended up being 30-38. Mason Rudolph actually looked pretty good, but then when he didn't look good at all. He had 252 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions on the day. So, yeah, that's another destination. I feel like Kirk Cousins can go to and probably step in and start right away. Anthony Richardson had 131 yards, a touchdown on the day, and he had an interception. He didn't really have to do much this game. Man, this guy had a breakout performance. After Jonathan Taylor muffed that play that would have made the game close last week when he had the ball and he was right there before he went to the end zone, he threw the ball out, and that just changed the complexity of the game. He had 218 yards and 3 touchdowns. Every time you seen him, he had a huge play and he looked unstoppable. He definitely looked really good that game. What I was surprised with too is Josh Downs. He looked pretty well. He had 61 yards and a touchdown. But the whole person who really shined and put the team on his back and said, "My bad for last week," and stepped his game up tremendously was Jonathan Taylor. Come on now. Listen, this guy had 218 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's incredible. You could say Tennessee Titans not a good team, but they're a professional team. And to get those type of yards and to run all over a team like that, you got to give credit where credit is due. I want to go to the Minnesota Vikings and the Seattle Seahawks. This is where I thought we were going to get a little help at to no prevail. This game was really good and it was close. At one point, Seattle took the lead with 4 minutes left and it was 20-24, and I thought that might have been the game. Sam Darnold went down and made a huge comeback and played really well with the execution. He had 246 yards, 3 touchdowns. And Justin Jefferson looked really good as well. I didn't want them to win, but he did really well for me and my fantasy team. He had 144 yards and 2 touchdowns. Geno Smith looked good on the day. He had 314 yards, 3 touchdowns. He had 2 picks to go along with it as well. But Jackson Smith and Jigba really has been one of his number one targets right now. I mean, you do have DK Metcalf and you have Tyler Lockett, but you got to look more into Jackson Smith and Jigba's performance. He had 8 receptions, 95 yards, and a touchdown. And it seems like he finds the end zone more than anybody else on that team. But when it came down to at the end of the game, Sam Darnold had that really crucial drive and got the ball to Justin Jefferson. I don't know how he caught that pass on those two guys and went in for the score, and they didn't look back. And that final score was 27-24. New England Patriots and the Buffalo Bills was a weird game. This is when I say any given Sunday hits different because they outplayed Buffalo and it was a possibility that they should have won. It was too many mistakes on their end that cost them that game. Drake May is definitely their franchise quarterback. That guy went out there and he was unfaded. He executed and he looked pretty good. He had 261 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick on the day. Ramondre Stevenson was one of the reasons they lost, and I don't want to put it all on him. He fumbled the ball, and he has problems fumbling the ball a long time in the league right now. And I'm definitely surprised that they don't got another person over there to really stepped up their game when they had the opportunity. But he fumbled the ball, and it was just bad plays on their part and poor execution that cost them this loss right here. He had 60 yards on the score. And Kayshawn Booty, he had 95 yards and a touchdown as well. That was one of Drake May's top targets. Josh Allen had a touchdown and he had an interception, and they rattled him the whole game. James Cook looked really good, and he's really been stepping his game up. He had 100 yards on 11 carries and a touchdown, and he had 3 receptions for 26 yards in the score. That final score was really weird because I felt like New England still had a chance to win that game, but the 24-21 victory is still the reason why I still feel like even in a bad game with Josh Allen, he still should be one of the MVP candidates. I think that made him slip down a little bit, and people look more into what happened when the stage was big and the lights was bright with Lamar Jackson. Jacksonville Jaguars and Raiders, that was going to really be a bad game, and it was to me. That final score was 19-14, and they won at the end of the Las Vegas Raiders, but I don't really want to get too deep into detail into that game. Both teams are 3-12, and I don't think both of their coaches will be back, Doug Peterson nor Antonio Pearson. It's unfortunate because they really didn't do anything to help Antonio Pierce out with this team because they gave him no weapons. San Francisco 49ers versus the Miami Dolphins. Brock Purdy had 313 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick on the day. George Kittle looked unstoppable with 8 receptions and 106 yards. Tua Tagovailoa had 215 yards, a touchdown. Devon Achane had 120 yards in the score as well. That final score got out of hand when it seems like Miami got the momentum and they didn't look back with the Devon Achane score. And that final score ended up being 29-17 Miami Dolphins. Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Dallas Cowboys was the shocker of the day. Baker Mayfield looked pretty good in that game, and I feel bad that he had to lose, but somebody had to lose, and the Cowboys wasn't hearing it. He had 303 yards, a touchdown, and a pick on the day. Bucky Irvin had 68 yards in the score as well. They pretty much neutralized Mike Evans. Deron Bland looked pretty good. He was by him side by side, and he only had 69 yards, so that speaks volumes. Cooper Rush really surprised people that game. He did enough not to lose. He had 292 yards in the score, and CeeDee Lamb looked unstoppable even with the banged up right shoulder. He had 7 receptions for 105 yards. The two mishaps, like one of the fumbles on the game, especially that last fumble on the game from Rasheed White, was the reason why they didn't win that game. I thought that they were going to drive and go down and score, but Dallas defense was thinking otherwise. That 26-24 score is really still important because they're still feeling like that the Dallas Cowboys still have a chance, even though I don't think that they'll have a really solid chance. But if they win out and get some help from some other teams, there's a possibility that they can still make the playoffs. So That was a good way to keep their team alive. The Monday Night Football game was really bad. When I seen it, I said, I don't know if I want to watch it. I was just, score checking on my fantasy, and it got really bad, you guys. I mean, Spencer Ryder had 153 yards and a touchdown, and he had 28 yards carrying, and he had nobody on offense to really help him execute a play. Jordan Love didn't really do that much. It didn't have to. He had 182 yards and a touchdown. For the most part, the backup running back was the one running all the scores and, playing and executing and shutting out the New Orleans Saints. And it was just ridiculous. Josh Jacobs had 69 yards and a touchdown, and that's when they let him sit out the rest of the game. That final score was a shutout victory, 34-0. And I haven't seen a shutout victory in a very long time in NFL. I think this is like the longest week that they had before they had a shutout game in the NFL right now, if I'm not mistaken. Most times you'll get a shutout in week 8 at least. And here we are, and we're in a very late week 16, and they finally got a shutout victory. But yeah, that spoke volumes on that game, and I was kind of disappointed. And it was just like, hey, they should have flexed it, and since they didn't, that's what we had to suffer through. I have a few stats that I wanted to put out there as well, and I want to start off, and I want to talk about Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers is the 8th in the NFL with 968 receiving yards. He finally went over and had 1,000 yards on Sunday. And Lad McConkey was 9th with 960 yards. And never have two rookies from the same college finish in the top 10 in receiving in the same season. And never has a college had a rookie wide receiver and tight end with 1,000 yards in the same year. So the Georgia Bulldogs are putting their stamp on the NFL early. Chargers have recorded at least 20 points in the last 12 games on a Thursday. The only longer such streak in the NFL history was in a 14-game run by the Cowboys between 2001 and 2013. Caleb Williams went 8 straight starts without throwing an interception. Now 9 straight starts when he played the Lions. And the Bears lost all 9. No other quarterback in NFL history has had a streak with more than 5 consecutive starts where he didn't throw a pick but still lost, since quarterback starts was first tracked in 1950. The Atlanta Falcons are planning to release Kirk Cousins before his $10 million roster bonus is due in March the 17th. And definitely after seeing that game with Michael Penix, yeah, I don't think that he's coming back to Atlanta. And like I said, he got a lot of options out there, but I don't think he's going to get that money that he's been getting with all these other teams. He's going to be on a prove-it deal this year. 2025. 4 different quality quarterbacks have a completion percentage of at least 70% this season. Jayden Daniels, Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield, and Tua Tagovailoa. That would be the most such in a quarterback in a single season in NFL history. On Sunday, the Seattle Seahawks had under 250 yards of offense. This was week 15. Had multiple turnovers, took 7 sacks, and had 100-plus penalties. The last NFL team to do that in a home game was the Jets on October the 4th, 1987. The game played with replacement players during the strike. Xavier Worthy of the Chiefs scored his 8th touchdown of the season. And he did that on the Saturday game. That was the most scrimmage touchdowns by a rookie on the defending NFL champion since Hugh Gallineo of the 1941 Chicago Bears. In just 13 NFL stars, Cooper Rush of the Dallas Cowboys has already beaten Joe Burrow, September 18, 2022, Jayden Daniels, November the 24th, 2024, Bryce Young, December 15th, 24, and he beat Baker Mayfield on last Sunday. No other quarterback has beaten 4 Heisman winning opposing starting quarterbacks within his first 13 career starts, Coach. Congratulations, Cooper Cup. I mean, Cooper Rush. I don't know how far that's going to get you in the playoffs, but yeah, I mean, at least you got those accolades. I would like to say I didn't plan on doing the show today, but just wanted to get some of the things and some of the stats out of the way, talk about what happened in the playoffs, at least in college, and give you some NFL rundowns. Want to say thank you all for chiming in. I appreciate everyone who comes in, give their insight and give their input. And if you have any questions or things that you want me to put in there, definitely do so. I would like for you to go to my YouTube page, like and subscribe. Hoovy is my Facebook page, where I put the breaking news and put the game scores of the games. And then I have other pages that you could check out as well. Of course, you can go to my email just in case you want to give me some news and insights or what you want me to put on there. TikTok is hugh.lee6. You can go on there and I put all my highlight reels on there. I like to put a lot more stuff implicated and showing you what we're doing as far as my podcast and the podcast that we do from the Nighthawk Network. And I want to talk to you guys and just say, have a good, safe holiday. I appreciate all the good football and the things that we're going to get on Wednesday. And we're going to get some basketball, a lot of sports going on this weekend. Merry Christmas to all. And I'd like to say, have a blessed day. And to all, peace. I won't be back on New Year's, but I will definitely be coming back the week after. Thank you for chiming in. And have a happy new year as well, because I won't be back until the 2025 season.